In today's Take a Day, I want to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers and how they just got the steal of the draft. Now, before we get into that, though, please like, subscribe, also hit the notification bell, just so you can get the newest and the bonus content first. We put out content every day, so you won't miss any content here. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into this. 2 preseason games have been played so far. Clippers won 1, Clippers lost 1. And in 2 preseason games, you have to look at, not only the pieces that they have that's going to be playing in the game, because Eric Bledsoe is he might actually be a starter. We saw a little bit of Paul George, and we saw a little bit of everybody actually. Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, players like that. So we've seen a little bit of everybody, Zubac, things like that. Of course, a couple hasn't played, but I mean, for the most part, we've seen their pieces. And, in the preseason, you always want to pay attention to the young players and the players that are drafted. And you want to pay attention to the bench players who you feel like can contribute going into a season and that can contribute going into a postseason when it's time for playoffs. Now, looking at these 2 games that has been played, one player I want to mention that I feel that not only could definitely be looked at as steal the draft, but could be potentially the best player on the Clippers bench in the future. And that's really, really big words to say, because Terrence Mann, last year definitely looked like the best player coming off the bench and everything like that. But he might have some competition, because Brandon Boston Jr., what I'm seeing from him so far, he has got to be one of the steals, if not the steal of the draft. The Clippers might have committed robbery to the NBA, because this guy is a 6'6" guard, shooting guard. He could probably play small forward too, but he can shoot the ball. He can knock down threes. He can step back. He's long. He can probably disrupt somebody on defense. And he is a pretty decent free throw shooter, and his ball handling isn't bad either. So it's like, and then, you think about, he's from Kentucky. So, Kentucky has always pretty much had, good players come out of there, especially, household names too. You think about DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, players like that. It's been, I think Anthony Davis, came from Kentucky, I think. So that's what I'm saying. Like, Kentucky's always had, good players and things like that. But, nevertheless, this kid right here is really showing a lot of promise. And I could tell you, if he continues to play like this and he can develop to how the Clippers want him to be, you add him off the bench with Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard and maybe Zubac by then, because hopefully, Serge Ibaka be in starting lineup, playing, comfortably and healthy. And you add those players coming off the bench, along with maybe Eric Bledsoe as well, because, Kawhi, hopefully, he'll be back by then, hopefully. So if you add that type of depth coming off the bench, man, you really got a really, really good, solid team. Now you have just as much or more depth than what you had last year, because if Brandon Boston can come in and knock down shots and not be afraid of the moment and be fearless, just the way Terrence Mann was last year going into this year, wow, you really got you really got some some big pieces there. I mean, some really, really good talent. Now, of course, I still miss the defense of Patrick Beverley being there, but you're gonna miss that defensive mindedness that he brought. But you're bringing in somebody who's more offensive minded in Brandon Boston, which you drafted. Now, of course, he can't make up for Patrick Beverley, but I mean, now he makes up for Patrick Beverley on the scoring end if he can continue to play this way. Now, of course, it's preseason. You don't want to get too high, too low about a situation, but at the same time, just looking at what I see from this kid, I see a lot of promise and a lot of upside. And for them to lose 2 pieces like Rondo and Patrick Beverley, you got to have somebody to at least make up for them scoring wise. And I feel like if this kid can come in here and add with Terrence Mann the way, and they could become like a duo and a combo off the bench that can really score for them with Eric Bledsoe maybe, or somebody like that. I mean, Luke Kennard, whoever comes off the bench, however Ty Lue decides to do it as the season goes along, depending on when Kawhi Leonard comes back. I mean, you really got a team with a lot of depth. you got a team that can come out there and put up points. I mean, if put it like this, if Brandon Boston can give them 12 to 14 points, I say this, if he can give them 10 to 12 points consistently off the bench when it's time for him to, come in and step up when everybody's healthy on the team, along with Terrence Mann giving them 10 to 12 points, and you add Luke Kennard and a couple other pieces they have on the bench, I mean, their bench is going to be probably top in the NBA. If not the best in the NBA, their bench is going to be like number 2 or number 3 in the NBA if they can get that type of production, because you're looking at somebody. When I look at Brandon Boston, he reminds me of a Brandon Ingram, a little, maybe a potential Kevin Durant type player in the future. We have to see, because he's got that length, but he can also shoot it from deep, and everything. But of course, he's not 7 feet like KD, but he reminds me of more of a Brandon Ingram, but possibly a better version of Brandon Ingram. I feel like as he evolves, if he stays healthy, he'll be a better version of what Brandon Ingram is. And Brandon Ingram's pretty good, actually. So, I mean, that's, high praise for a player who's only played 2 preseason games, and a player who's shown a lot of promise and who's shown a lot of upside so far. And like I said, if this kid can continue to play like that and give them valuable minutes coming in there, play hard on defense, listen to the coaches, and allow them to put him in the right position to be as successful as he can. I mean, the Clippers definitely found a steal in the draft, because that's going to be at least double-digit points coming off the bench consistently every game if this kid can maintain that, because he definitely has something that I don't see a lot of young players have, and that's a fearlessness about him, and he's not afraid of the moment. And I can kind of sense that about him already. And you already have a player on the Clippers who already has that. That's an up-and-coming, player in Terrence Mann. So if you got another player like that coming off your bench, coming in there to contribute like that, well, that's only going to bode well for the Clippers against a lot of teams, damn near against any team, because a lot of good teams in the NBA, you have to understand, a lot of good teams in the NBA are top heavy, which means they got a lot of talent in regards to their starting lineup, but their bench is not that good. So when you're a top heavy team, a lot of times what happens is you lose playoff games against teams who have a better bench, who would sometime against a team who is not as top heavy as you are, because they have more balance, whereas you're really, really top heavy. And as soon as your starters sit down, well, your team loses the lead and the other team takes the lead, and sometimes you don't get it back. So one thing we can say about the Clippers, with this team the last couple seasons, they're not a top heavy team. They got pieces on the bench that can come in there and put up numbers. And like I said, with this kid here, Brandon Boston Jr., they just might have added another piece who can come in there and put up numbers and really, really shock some teams and really put teams on notice like, hey, the Clippers are for real. Even more so than what some people probably think or think now about the Clippers, because, like I said, I've always said teams with the better bench have always been the teams that have excelled and won a lot of championships. I mean, you look at the Lakers back in the day with Shaq and Kobe. Yeah, they had Shaq and Kobe, but I mean, they also had pieces on the bench that can come and contribute. They may not have been household names that you thought or something like that, but they were names. Luke Walton, Brian Shaw, they had other players come off the bench, things like that. I mean, it was a collection of players that they had, on the bench that can sustain and play defense and keep them in games, and allow them to, propel. And when you think about, the Detroit Pistons back in the day with Chauncey Billups and all them, they had a nice bench crew as well. That's what I'm saying. Most teams with a really good bench usually go far in the playoffs. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, hell, look at Greg Popovich and the Spurs. They're another team. They always had a bench. I mean, hell, at one time, think about it. When they went to the finals, in 2011 or 12 against the Miami Heat, Kawhi Leonard was on the bench. That was one of their bench players, what I'm saying, for the moment anyway. He wasn't on the bench long, but still, I'm just saying teams that have a deep team, a deep roster with a good bench always usually have a great opportunity of going far in the playoffs, because they're not top heavy and they have something that a lot of other teams don't have, which is a good supporting cast that can come in and help them win games, when the starters are not playing that well. I mean, look at last year. I gave this example before. Last season, it was one game where the Clippers had played the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Hawks were up by 25 points versus the Clippers, and they were actually in the Clippers' hometown and in LA. But, Ty Lue takes out all the starters because they're playing like trash, and he puts in the bench with Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, and the rest of the crew, and they come in there and they cut the 25-point lead down to single digits. And then all of a sudden, hey, now the game is tied. Then all of a sudden, the starters come back in, Kawhi, PG, and the rest of them, and they start playing well. And then Kawhi Leonard ended it, in the fourth quarter, killed them. And they beat the Hawks from a 25-point deficit. And this is what I'm talking about. When you have a bench that is solidified, you can do a lot of great things in the playoffs. And I'm telling you, the Clippers bench was already good from last year. It really was. Only thing you're missing is they're missing Rondo, which he's on the Lakers now, and they're missing Patrick Beverley. But Rondo didn't play like playoff Rondo. He was trash for the Clippers, basically, no other way to put it. And he was a bust. And Patrick Beverley, well, I liked his defense. I loved the way he played, but he was one of them players that can really, really help you or really, really hurt you. Because if he's playing and locked in and engaged on defense the way he played on Devin Booker, that was phenomenal. But if he has antics like, pushing players the way he did Chris Paul and trying to get on people's skin and getting technical fouls and things like that, those are the areas that, Patrick Beverley can hurt you in a game and outside of a game. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way he's always been. I mean, he's always been that type of player. So you know what you get when you have him. But those are things that a lot of teams, a lot of organizations don't really favor. You see what I'm saying? So, they got rid of them. They got Eric Bledsoe. Hopefully he stays healthy. And he's played, pretty decent himself in the first two preseason games. He hasn't been, he didn't play bad. He didn't play good, but he didn't really play bad. I should say that. And, hopefully they got a good piece in him, and hopefully he's engaged and ready to make a run, with the Clippers. And like I said, this Brandon Boston kid, adding to their bench is going to make them even more of a deadlier team going forward in the season and in the playoffs. And, if they can get this type of production out of this kid coming off the bench or whether in the starting lineup, however Ty Lue decides to do it until Kawhi Leonard comes back, they could be a better team than what a lot of people are projecting them to be. Because I think a lot of analysts are looking at them as like a 7 or 8 seed. I personally think they might be able to get a 6 seed, maybe even a 5th seed if somebody, if one team intentionally loses a couple of games or sits out some players or something like that because they're already in the playoffs. Maybe, they can find themselves in a 5th seed or something like that. But the production that they have or that they have potential of getting from this, young kid and Brandon Boston and their bench and Terrence Mann and the rest of their crew, they're going to be a lot tougher team than what people think. Now, of course, the West is tough. I've been said that. So, the Clippers are going to have to bring it every night. And Paul George, he's going to have to be more consistent. He gonna have to do it when it matters most. I know a lot of people, a lot of fans are looking at it like Paul George, maybe he could step back into the role of where he was in Indiana. Yeah, that's fine. But in Indiana, he played good during the regular season and he played good in the playoffs some, but he didn't win any championships for a reason because he wasn't clutch when he needed to be and he just couldn't get over the hump. So if he is the player he was in Indiana, that would be great for the regular season. But I hope he utilizes some of that for the playoffs because, missing 2 crucial free throws in a playoff game the way he did last year versus the Phoenix Suns is not clutch. And that's something Kawhi Leonard wouldn't do. And this is why I said, hopefully Paul George can fix a couple of his issues that I actually pointed out in my yesterday's video. So make sure you go check that out if you haven't. And, I'm rooting for him to play really well. I really am, what I'm saying? Because I know Paul George got a lot of good in him and everything like that. But it's just those moments where he has to be clutch, and you can't go 1 for 9 the first 2 quarters and then go, 8 for 9 the third quarter. It's just, the inconsistency that he has in his game a lot of times really, really irritates me. And I'm pretty sure it irritates a lot of people because, a lot of people know Paul George can be better, but, he has to go out there and prove it. But hey, hopefully, everybody gets healthy, everybody gets back right, and hopefully they put this thing together and make a run, because I mean, I'm getting sick and tired of hearing, Lakers versus Nets in the finals. It's like the media is like discrediting every other team in the NBA, like it's only 2 teams playing the whole season and the other 26 or 28 teams are not even there. You know what I'm saying? So it's really a slap in the face to a lot of teams, and I hope the Clippers take it to heart the most, because the Clippers are more talented overall than a lot of teams in the West. They really are. I mean, from top to bottom. I mean, they're more talented than the Lakers, if you ask me, because an old LeBron James is still really good. But I don't know if an old LeBron James is better than a Kawhi Leonard that's healthy in his prime. I don't think so. I mean, the last time we saw LeBron James play Kawhi Leonard in a 7-game series, what happened? Kawhi Leonard won a championship against LeBron James in his prime with the big 3 on Miami Heat. So don't tell me a LeBron James in this era is way better than a Kawhi Leonard, who's a lot younger and, who's more in his prime. Now, I will give LeBron this, LeBron had a better team a couple years ago than the Clippers did. I'll give him that. He definitely had a better team, because Anthony Davis, well, in a lot of people's eyes, Anthony Davis is a better player than Paul George in a lot of people's eyes. So, okay, if you want to say that, that's fine. But I mean, they had better pieces. Rondo fits better. He played better that well in the bubble than Lou Williams did for the Clippers. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot that goes with that. And like I said, they had more consistency out their players and everything like that. So I would say, the Lakers had the better team that year because they won, even though I don't really respect that championship like that in a bubble. But, hey, you got to give props where it's due. So I give him that. But I mean, honestly, I don't put LeBron over Kawhi Leonard. No, I think Kawhi Leonard's a better player. He's in his prime. And like I said, he can carry a team more now. LeBron can't carry a team. Anthony Davis can't stay healthy enough. And I don't believe in any other player on there. I really don't believe in Rondo. I don't believe in Russell Westbrook because, I mean, he's just all regular season and no postseason. And so it's like when you think about it, the Clippers just really have a more talented team than a lot of teams in the NBA. And like I said, if they can get, this young guy, Boston Jr., to help them out on their bench and make them more formidable, well, they really got something going then, because now they're adding offensive depth to a team that has some good defensive wing players as well. So it's like you're adding offense to the defense. If they get Serge Ibaka healthy, if he stays healthy, that's defense. Nicholas Batum, defense. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, defense. You see what I'm saying? They have really good defensive players. So when you add all that in there, can't forget Marcus Morris. So that's what I'm saying. They have good defensive players, and now they're just adding more offensive repertoire to what they have. They're going to be a deadly team if they're healthy. But hey, that's my take on the situation. Leave any comments in the comment section. As always, we'll always talk about it and engage as we always do. And hey, Khaliis out.